So it turns out I was streaming for almost 30 minutes and there was no audio. So nobody heard me reading this entire time. Thank you, Boneless, for letting me know that my audio wasn't going through. I I wasn't muted. It just, I don't know, it wasn't synced up, I guess. But, it is what it is. And I'm confused because I saw people not in the chat, but like, ugh, like watching. So I was like, okay, everything should be fine. Turns out nothing was fine. But I am back, and oh, it seems like things are working now, thankfully. Sorry, I'm like moving stuff around. Ugh. Okay. So, yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and start back up. Um, Previously we just met Corporal Tatiana Romanova. She was summoned by Colonel Kleb, which Kleb, she's known for being like the interrogator and stuff. And because of that, everybody's scared of her, including Tatiana. So she is not too excited to go meet her, but Tatiana has to meet her for the plan, the conspiracy that the Russians have against James Bond that they're trying to stir up, like controversy or conspiracy. I'm not sure. We're still a mystery for right now. So we'll go ahead and get started again. Uh, you know, do it again from the top. So we're at chapter 9, A Labor of Love. Outside the anonymous cream painted door, Tatiana already smelled the inside of the room. When the voice told her curtly to come in, and she opened the door, it was the smell that filled her mind while she stood and stared into the eyes of the woman who sat behind the round table under the center light. It was the smell of the metro on a hot evening. Cheap scent concealing animal odors. People in Russia soak themselves in scent, whether they have had a bath or not, but mostly when they have not. And healthy, clean girls like Tatiana always walk home from the office, unless the rain or the snow is too bad, so as to avoid the stench in the trains and the metro. Now Tatiana was in a bath of the smell. Her nostrils twitched with disgust. It was her disgust and her contempt for a person who could live in the middle of such a smell that helped her to look down into the yellowish eyes that stared at her through the square glass panes. Nothing could be read in them. They were receiving eyes, not giving eyes. They slowly moved all over her, like camera lenses, taking her in. Colonel Klebb spoke. "You are a fine-looking girl, Comrade Corporal. Walk across the room and back." What were these honeyed words, taught with a new fear, fear of the notorious personal habits of the woman? Tatiana did as she was told. "Take your jacket off. Put it down on the chair. Raise your hands above your head. Higher. Now bend and touch your toes. Upright. Good. Sit down." The woman spoke like a doctor. She gestured to the chair across the table from her. Her staring, probing eyes hooded themselves as they bent over the file on the table. It must be my zapiska, thought Tatiana. How interesting to see the actual instrument that ordered the whole of one's life. How thick it was, nearly 2 inches thick. What could be on all those pages? She looked across at the open folder with wide, fascinated eyes. Colonel Klebb rifled through the last pages and shut down the cover. The cover was orange, with a diagonal stripe across. What did those colors signify? The woman looked up. Somehow, Tatiana managed to look bravely back. Comrade Corporal Romanova. It was the voice of authority of the senior officer. I have good reports of your work. See, my voice is all messed up now. Can't do the whole Russian thing. Okay. I have good reports of your work. Your your record is excellent, both in your duties and in sport. The state is pleased with you. Tatiana could not believe her ears. She felt faint with relaxation. She blushed to the roots of her hair and then turned pale. She put out a hand to the table edge. She stammered in a weak voice. I I am grateful, Comrade Colonel. Because of your excellent services, you have been singled out for a most important assignment. This is a great honor for you. Do you understand? Whatever it was better than what might have been. Yes, indeed, Comrade Colonel. This assignment carries much responsibilities. It bears a higher rank. I congratulate you on your promotion, Comrade Corporal, on completion of the assignment to the rank of Captain of State Security. This was unheard of for a girl of 24. Tatiana sensed danger. She stiffened like an animal who sees the steel jaws beneath the meat. I am deeply honored, Comrade Colonel. She was unable to keep the weariness out of her voice. Rosa Klebb grunted non-committingly. She knew exactly what the girl must have thought when she got the summons. The effect of her kindly reception, her shock of relief at the good news, her reawakening fears, had been transparent. This was a beautiful, guileless, innocent girl. Just what the conspiratia demanded. Now she must be loosened up. My dear, she said smoothly, how remiss of me. This promotion should be celebrated in a glass of wine. You must not think we senior officers are inhumane. We will drink together. It will be a good excuse to open a bottle of French champagne. Rosa Klebb got up and went over to the sideboard where her Batman had laid out what she had ordered. Try one of these chocolates while I wrestle with the cork. It is never easy getting out champagne corks. We girls really need a man to help us with that sort of work, don't we? The ghastly prattle went on as she put a spectacular box of chocolates in front of Tatiana. She went back to the sideboard. They are from Switzerland. The very best. The soft centers are the round ones. The hard ones are square. Tatiana murmured her thanks. She reached out and chose a round one. It would be easier to swallow. Her mouth was dry with fear of the moment when she would finally see the trap and feel it snap around her neck. It must be something dreadful to need to be concealed under all this play acting. The bite of chocolate stuck in her mouth like chewing gum. Mercifully, the glass of champagne was thrust into her hand. Rosa Klebb stood over her. She lifted her glass merrily. "Zavash Zavori, Comrade Tatiana, and my warmest congratulations." Tatiana stitched a ghastly smile on her face. She picked up her glass and gave a little bow. "Zavash Zavardi, Comrade Colonel." She drained the glass, as is the custom in Russian drinking, and put it down in front of her. Rosa Klebb immediately filled it again, slopping some over the tabletop. "And now to the health of your new department, comrade." She raised her glass. The sugary smile tightened as she watched the girl's reaction. "To smersh!" Numbly, Tatiana got to her feet. She picked up the full glass. "To smersh!" The word scarcely came out. She choked on the champagne and had to take 2 gulps. She sat heavily down. Rosa Klebb gave her no time for reflection. She sat down opposite and laid her hands flat on the table. "And now to business, comrade." Authority was back in the voice. "There, there is much work to be done." She leant forward. "Have you ever wished to live abroad, comrade? In a foreign country?" The champagne was having its effect on Tatiana. Probably worse was to come, but now let it come quickly. "No, comrade, I am happy in Moscow." "You have never thought what it might be like living in the West? All those beautiful clothes, the jazz, the modern things." "No, comrade." She was truthful. She had never thought about it. "And if the state required you to live in the West?" "I would obey." "Willingly?" Tatiana shrugged her shoulders with a hint of impatience. "One does what one is told." The woman paused. There was girlish conspiracy in the next question. "Are you a virgin, comrade?" Oh my God, thought Tatiana. No, comrade colonel." The wet lips glinted in the light. "How many men?" Tatiana colored to the roots of her hair. Russian girls are reticent and prudish about sex. In Russia, the sexual climate is mid-Victorian. These questions from the club woman were all the more revolting for being asked in this cold, inquisitorial tone by a state official she had never met before in her life. Tatiana screwed up her courage. She stared defensively into the yellow eyes. "What is the purpose of these intimate questions, please, comrade colonel?" Rosa Klebb straightened. Her voice cut back like a whip. "Remember yourself, comrade! You are not here to ask questions. You forget to whom you speak with. Answer me." Tatiana shrank back. "3 men, comrade colonel." "When? How old were you?" The hard yellow eyes looked across the table into the hunted blue eyes of the girl and held them and commanded. Tatiana was on the edge of tears. "At school. When I was 17, then at at the Institute of Foreign Languages. I was 22. Then last year I was 23. It was a friend I met skating. Their names, please, comrade. Rosa Klebb picked up a pencil and pulled a scribbling pad towards her. Tatiana covered her face with her hands and burst into tears. No, she cried between her sobs. No, never. Whatever you do to me, you have no right. Stop that nonsense. The voice was a hiss. In 5 minutes. Oh, sorry, wrong person. In 5 minutes, I could have those names from you, or anything else I wish to know. You are playing a dangerous game with me, comrade. My patience will not last forever. Rosa Klebb paused. She was being too rough. For the moment, we will pass on. Tomorrow, you will give me the names. No harm will come to these men. They will be asked one or two questions about you. Simple, technical questions. That is all. Now sit up and dry your tears. We cannot have any more of this foolishness. Rosa Klebb got up and came round the table. She stood looking down at Tatiana. The voice became oily and smooth. Come, come, my dear, you must trust me. Your little secrets are safe with me. Here, drink some more champagne and forget this little unpleasantness. We must be friends. We must have work. We we have work to do together. You must learn, my dear Tatiana, to treat me as you would your mother. Here, drink this down. Adam, what's up? Hi! What are you doing? I'm reading. What are you doing, Adam? What's up? Like you wrote hi with so many eyes. I hope you're having a great night or a good day. I think it's like daytime for you or morning-ish time. I'm not quite sure. Alright, let's see. Tatiana pulled a handkerchief out of the waistband of her skirt and dabbed her eyes. She reached out a trembling hand for the glass of champagne and sipped at it with bowed head. Drink it down, my dear. Rosa Klebb stood over the girl like some dreadful mother duck, clucking encouragement. Obediently, Tatiana emptied the glass. She felt drained of resistance, tired, willing to do anything to finish with this interview and get away somewhere and sleep. She thought, so this is what it's like on the interrogation table, and that is the voice the Klebb uses. Well, it was working. She was docile now. She would cooperate. Rosa Klebb sat down. She observed the girl appraisingly from behind the motherly mask. And now, my dear, just one more intimate little question. As between girls, do you enjoy making love? Does it give you pleasure? Much pleasure? Tatiana's hands came up and covered her face. From behind them, in a muffled voice, she said, well, yes, comrade colonel. Naturally, one is in love. Her voice trailed away. What else could she say? What answer did this woman want? And, oh, and supposing, my dear, you were not in love, then would making love with a man still give you pleasure? Tatiana shook her head indecisively. She took her hands down from her face and bowed her head. The hair fell down on either side in a heavy curtain. She was trying to think, to be helpful, but she couldn't imagine such a situation. She supposed. I suppose it would depend on the man, Comrade Colonel. That is a sensible answer, my dear. Rosa Klebb opened a drawer in the table. She took out a photograph and slipped it across to the girl. What about this man, for instance? Tatiana drew the photograph cautiously towards her as if it might catch fire. She looked down wearily at the handsome, ruthless face. She tried to think, to imagine. I cannot tell, Comrade Colonel. He is good looking. Perhaps if he was gentle. She pushed the photograph anxiously away from her. No, keep it, my dear. Put it beside your bed and think of this man. You will learn more about him later in your new work. And now, the eyes glittered beyond the square panes of glass. Would you like to know what your new work is to be? The, the task for which you have chosen? That you have been chosen from all the girls in Russia? Yes, indeed, Comrade Colonel. Tatiana looked obediently across at the intent face that was now pointing at hers like a gun dog. The wet, rubbery lips parted enticingly. It is a simple, delightful duty you have been chosen for, Comrade Corporal. A real labor of love, as we say. It is a matter of falling in love. That is all. Nothing else. Just falling in love with this man. But who is he? I I don't even know him. Klebb's mouth reveled. This would give the silly chit of a girl something to think about. He is English spy. Pourquoi moi? Tatiana clapped a hand over her mouth, as much to stifle the use of God's name as from terror. She sat tense with the shock and gazed at Rosa Klebb through her wide, slightly drunk eyes. Yes, said Rosa Klebb, pleased with the effect of her words. He is a Russian spy, perhaps the most famous of them all. And from now on you are in love with him. So you had better get used to the idea. And no silliness, comrade. We must be serious. This is an important state matter for which you have been chosen as the instrument. So no nonsense, please. No for Now for some practical details. Rosa Klebb stopped. She said sharply, and take your hand away from your silly face, and stop looking like a frightened cow. Sit up in your chair and pay attention, or it will be the worse for you. Understood? Yes, Comrade Colonel. Tatiana quickly straightened her back and sat up with her hands in her lap, as if she was back at the security officer's school. Her mind was in a ferment, but this was no time for personal things. Her whole training told her that this was an operation for the state. She was now working for her country. Somehow she had come to be chosen for an important conspiratia. As an officer in the MGB, she must do her duty and do it well. She listened carefully and with her whole professional attention. For the moment, Rosa Klebb put on her official voice, I will be brief. You will hear more later. For the next few weeks you will be most carefully trained for this operation until you know exactly what to do in all contingencies. You will be taught certain foreign customs. You will be equipped with beautiful clothes. You will be instructed in all the arts of allurement. Then you will be sent to a foreign country, somewhere in Europe. There you will meet this man. You will seduce him. In this matter you will have no silly compunctions. Your body belongs to the state. Since your birth, the state has nourished it. Now your body must work for the state. Is that understood? Yes, comrade colonel. The logic was inescapable. You will accompany this man to England. There you will no doubt be questioned. The questioning will be easy. The English do not use harsh methods. You will give such answers as you can without endangering the state. We will supply you with we will supply you uh oh, that's weird. I think this is a typo. Yeah. It says we will supply you with certain answers. I guess it should be we will supply you with certain answers. Alright. We will supply you with certain answers which we will like to be given. You will probably be sent to Canada. That is where the English send a certain category of foreign prisoners. You will be rescued and brought back to Moscow. Rosa Klebb peered at the girl. She seemed to be accepting all this without question. You see, it is a comparatively simple matter. Have you any questions at this stage? What will happen to the man, comrade colonel? That is a matter of indifference to us. We shall simply use him as a means to introduce you into England. The object of the operation is to give false information to the British. We shall, of course, comrade, be very glad to have your own impressions of life in England. The reports of a highly trained and intelligent girl such as yourself will be of great value to the state. Really, comrade colonel? Tatiana felt important. Suddenly, it all sounded exciting. If only she could do it well, she would assuredly do her very best. But supposing she could not make the English spy love her? She looked again at the photograph. She put her head on one side. It was an attractive face. What were these arts of allurement that the woman had talked about? What could they be? Perhaps they would help. Satisfied, Rosa Klebb got up from the table. "And now we can relax, my dear. Work is over for the night. I will go and tidy up, and we will have a friendly chat together. I shan't be a moment. Eat up those chocolates, or they will go to waste." Rosa Klebb made a vague gesture of the hand and disappeared with a preoccupied look into the next room. Tatiana sat back in her chair. So that was what it was all about. It really wasn't so bad after all. What a relief! And what an honor to have been chosen. How silly to have been so frightened! Naturally, the great leaders of the state would not allow harm to come to an innocent citizen who worked hard and had no black marks on her zapiska. Suddenly, she felt immensely grateful to the father figure that was the state, and proud that she would now have a chance to repay some of her debt. Even the Klebb woman wasn't really so bad after all. Oh, excuse me. Tatiana was still cheerfully reviewing the situation when the bedroom door opened and the Klebb woman appeared in the opening. "What do you think of this, my dear?" Colonel Klebb opened her dumpy arms and twirled on her toes like a mannequin. She struck a pose with one arm outstretched and the other arm crooked at her waist. Tatiana's mouth had fallen open. She shut it quickly. She searched for something to say. Colonel Klebb of Smersh was wearing a semi-transparent nightgown in orange crêpe de chine. It had scallops of the same material round the low, square neckline, and scallops at the wrists of the broadly flounced sleeves. Underneath could be seen a brassiere consisting of two large pink satin roses. Below, she wore old-fashioned knickers of pink satin with elastic above the knees. One dimpled knee, like a yellowish cocoanut, appeared thrust forward between the half-open folds of the nightgown in the classic stance of the modeler. The feet were enclosed in pink satin slippers with pom-poms of ostrich feathers. Rosa Klebb had taken off her spectacles, and her naked face was now thick with mascara and rouge and lipstick. She looked like the oldest and ugliest whore in the world. Oh my god. I'm sorry. mm. I didn't expect that description of this woman. Tatiana stammered. "It's very pretty, isn't it?" twittered the woman. She went over to a broad couch in the corner of the room. It was covered with a garish piece of peasant tapestry. At the back, against the wall, were rather grimy satin cushions in pastel colors. With a squeak of pleasure, Rosa Klebb threw herself down in the caricature of a rem- recamier pose. She reached up an arm and turned on a pink-shaded table lamp whose stem was a naked woman in sham lalique glass. Lalique glass. She she patted the couch beside her. "Turn out the top light, my dear. The switch is by the door. Then come and sit beside me. We must get to know each other better." Oh man, I don't like where this is going. Somebody send some help to Tatiana. Oh my god. Tatiana walked to the door. She switched off the top light. Her hand dropped decisively to the doorknob. She turned it and opened the door and stepped coolly out into the corridor. Suddenly, her nerve broke. She banged the door shut behind her and ran wildly off down the corridor with her hands over her ears against the pursuing scream that never came. Oh my god. Tatiana freaking ran for her life. Oh, it's probably a good thing. She's about to get raped, I think, by Colonel Clem. Oh my god. The oldest and ugliest whore in the world. Oh my gosh. What the heck? That was crazy. We're on to chapter 10. Chapter 10. The fuse burns. It was the morning of the next day, after Tatiana freaking ran for her life. Colonel Cleve sat at her desk in the roomy office that was her headquarters in the underground basement of Smersh. It was more an operations room than an office. One wall was completely papered with a map of the Western Hemisphere. The opposite wall was covered with the Eastern Hemisphere. Behind her desk, and within reach of her left hand, a telecrypton occasionally chattered out a signal en clair, duplicating another machine in the cipher department, under the tall radio mast on the roof of the building. From time to time, when Colonel Klebb thought of it, she tore off the lengthened strip of tape and read through the signals. This was a formality. If anything important happened, her telephone would ring. Every agent of Smersh throughout the world was controlled from this room. And it was a vigilant and iron control. The heavy face looked sullen and dissipated. The chicken skin under the eyes was pouched, and the whites of the eyes were veined with red. Man, this poor woman, like every time she is described, like she just sounds absolutely ghastly. Like, or beastly, like it's terrible. One of the three telephones at her side purred softly. She picked up the receiver. Sientimien. She turned to Kronstein, who sat picking his teeth thoughtfully with an opened paperclip, in an armchair up against the left-hand wall, under the toe of Africa. Krenitsky. Kronstein slowly turned his head and looked at the door. Red Grant came in and closed the door softly behind him. He walked up to the desk and stood looking down obediently, almost hungrily, into the eyes of his commanding officer. Kronstein thought he looked like a powerful mastiff waiting to be fed. Rosa Klebb surveyed him coldly. "Are you fit and ready for work?" "Yes, comrade colonel." "Let's have a look at you. Take off your clothes." Red Grant showed no surprise. He took off his coat, and after looking around for somewhere to put it, dropped it on the floor. Then, unselfconsciously, he took off the rest of his clothes and kicked off his shoes. The great red-brown body with its golden hair lit up the drab room. Grant stood relaxed, his hands held loosely at his sides, and one knee bent slightly forward, as if he was posing for an art class. Rosa Klebb got to her feet and came round the desk. She studied the body minutely, prodding here, feeling there, as if she was buying a horse. She went behind the man and continued her minute inspection, before she came back in front of him. Kronstein saw her slip something out of her jacket pocket and fit it into her hand. There was a glint of metal. The woman came round and stood close up to the man's gleaming stomach, her right arm behind her back. She held his eyes in hers. Suddenly, with terrific speed and the whole weight of her shoulder behind the blow, she whipped her right fist loaded with a heavy brass knuckle duster round and exactly into the solar plexus of the man. Whook! Grant let out a snort of surprise and pain. His knees gave slightly and then straightened. For a flash the eyes closed tight with agony. Then they opened again and glared redly down into the cold, yellow, probing eyes behind the square glasses. Apart from an angry flush on the skin just below the breastbone, Grant showed no ill effects from a blow that would have sent any normal man withering to the ground. Rosa Klebb smiled grimly. She slipped the knuckle duster back in her pocket and walked to her desk and sat down. She looked across at Kronstein with a hint of pride. At least he's fit enough, she said. Kronstein grunted. The naked man grinned with sly satisfaction. He brought up one hand and rubbed his stomach. Rosa Klebb sat back in her chair and watched him thoughtfully. Finally she said, Comrade Granitsky, there is work for you. An important task. More important than anything you have attempted. It is a task that will earn you a medal. Grant's eyes gleamed. For the target is a difficult and dangerous one. You will be in a foreign country and alone. Is that clear? Yes, Comrade Colonel. Grant was excited. Here was a chance for that big step forward. What would the medal be? The Order of Lenin? He listened carefully. The target is an English spy. You would like to kill an English spy? Very much indeed, Comrade Colonel. Grant's enthusiasm was genuine. He asked nothing better than to kill an Englishman. He had accounts to settle with the bastards. You will need many weeks of training and preparation. On this assignment you will be operating in the guise of an English agent. Your manners and appearance are uncouth. You will have to learn at least some of the tricks. The voice oh, sorry. This is the narrator. The voice sneered. Of a gentleman. You will be placed in the hands of a certain Englishman we have there. A former gentleman of the Foreign Affairs Office in London. It will be his task to make you pass as some sort of an English spy, as they employ many different kinds of men. It should not be difficult, and you will have to learn many other things. The operation will be at the end of August, but you will start your training at once. There is much to be done. Put on your clothes and report back to the ADC. Understood? Yes, Comrade Colonel. Grant knew not to ask any questions. He scrambled into his clothes, indifferent to the woman's eyes on him, and walked over to the door, buttoning his jacket. He turned. Thank you, Comrade Colonel. Rosa Klebb was writing up her note of the interview. She didn't answer or look up, and Grant went out and closed the door softly behind him. The woman threw down her pen and sat back. And now, Comrade Kronstein. Are there any points to discuss before we put the full machinery in motion? I should mention that the Presidium has approved the target and ratified the death warrant. I have reported the broad lines of your plan to Comrade General Gru- Grubozaboyskikov. He is in agreement. The detailed execution has been lifted entirely in my hands. The combined planning and operations staff has been selected and is waiting to begin work. Have you any last minute thoughts, comrade? Kronstein sat looking up at the ceiling, the tips of his fingers joined in front of him. He was indifferent to the condescension in the woman's voice. The pulse of concentration beat in his temples. This man, Graninsky, he is reliable. You can trust him in a foreign country. He will not go private. He has been tested for nearly 10 years. He has had many opportunities to escape. He has been watched for signs of itching feet. There has never been a breath of suspicion. The man is in the possession of a drug addict. He would no more abandon the Soviet Union than a drugger would abandon the source of his cocaine. He is my top executioner. There is no better one. And this gal, Romanova, she was satisfactory. Oh, sorry, this is the guy, Kronstein, saying this. And this girl, Romanova, she was satisfactory, the woman said grudgingly. She is very beautiful. She will serve our purpose. She is not a virgin, but she is prudish and sexually unawakened. She will receive instruction. Her English is excellent. I have given her a certain version of her task and its object. She is cooperative. If she should show signs of falter, I have the addresses of certain relatives, including children. I shall also have the names of her previous lovers. If necessary, it would be explained to her that these people will be hostages until her task is completed. She has an affectionate nature. Such a hint would be sufficient. But I do not anticipate any trouble from her. Kromnova. That is the name of a bufshi of one of the former people. It seems odd to be using a Romanov for such a delicate task. Her grandparents were distinctly related to the imperial family, but she does not frequent Bufshi circles. Anyway, all our grandparents were former people. There is nothing one can do about it. Our grandparents were not called Romanov, said Kronstein dryly. However, so long as you are satisfied. He reflected a moment. And this man Bond, have we discovered his whereabouts? Yes, the MGB English network reports him in London. During the day, he he goes to his headquarters. At night, he sleeps in his flat in a district of London called Chelsea. That is good. Let us hope he stays there for the next few weeks. That will mean that he is not engaged on some operation. He will be available to go after our bait when they get the scent. Meanwhile, Kronstein's dark, pensive eyes. Oh, that's the narrator. Kronstein's dark, pensive eyes continued to examine a particular point on the ceiling. I have been studying the suitability of centers abroad. I have decided on Istanbul for the first contact. We have a good apparatus there. The Secret Service has only a small station. The head of the station is reported to give a good man. He will be liquidated. The center is conveniently placed for us, with short lines of communication with Bulgaria and the Black Sea. It is relatively far from London. I am working out details of the point of assassination and the means of getting this bond there after he has contacted the girl. It will be either in France or very near it. We have excellent leverage on the French press. They will make the most of this kind of story, with its sensational disclosures of sex and espionage. It also remains to be decided when Graninsky shall enter the picture. These are minor details. We must choose the cameramen and other operatives and move them quietly into Istanbul. There must be no crowding of our apparatus there, no congestion, no unusual activity. We will warn all departments that wireless traffic with Turkey is to be kept absolutely normal before and during the operation. We we don't want the British interceptors smelling of rot. The Cypher Department has agreed that there is no security objection to handing over the outer case of a Spectre machine. That will be attractive. The machine will go to the special devices section. They will handle its operation. Kronstein stopped talking. His gaze slowly came down from the ceiling. He rose thoughtfully to his feet. He looked across and into the watchful, intent eyes of the woman. Gotta take a sip of my tea. My audio's going, right? Okay, good. I swear. I swear if the audio was gone, I'd be so pissed. Mm. Okay, here we go. I can't think of nothing else at the moment, comrade, he said. Many details will come up and have to be settled from day to day, but I think the operation can safely begin. I agree, comrade. The, the matter can now go forward. I will issue the necessary directives. The harsh, authoritative voice unbent. I am grateful for your cooperation. Kronstein lowered his head 1 inch in acknowledgment. He turned and walked softly out of the room. In the silence, the Telekrupton gave a warning ping and started up its mechanical chatter. Rosa Klebb stirred in her chair and reached for one of the telephones. She dialed a number. "Operations room," said a man's voice. Rosa Klebb's pale eyes gazed out across the room. lit on the pink shape on the wall map that was England. Her wet lips parted. Colonel Klebb speaking. The conspiratia against the English spy bond. The operation will commence forthwith. Oh, the operation is commencing. So I don't know if I'll do up to chapter 14 only because I started late and then I was muted for 30 minutes. But we're going to continue on to part 2. We're in part 2. We were in part 1. Now we're in part 2. The execution. Chapter 11. The soft life. The blubbery arms of the soft life had bound round the neck, and they were slowly strangling him. He was a man of war, and when, for a long period, there was no war, his spirit went into decline. In his particular line of business, peace had reigned for nearly a year, and peace was killing him. At 7:30 on the morning of Thursday, August 12th, Bond awoke in his comfortable flat in the plane-treed square off the King's Road, and was disgusted to find that he was thoroughly bored with the prospect of the day ahead. Just as, in at least one religion, a- acedia? Acedia? It's a different language word. It's spelled Accidie. Acedia is the first of the cardinal sins. So boredom, and particularly the incredible circumstance of waking up bored, was the only vice Bond utterly condemned. Bond reached out and gave 2 rings on the bell to show May, his trusted Scottish housekeeper, that he was ready for breakfast. Then he abruptly flung the single sheet off his naked body and swung his feet to the floor. There was only one way to deal with boredom: kick oneself out of it. Bond went down on his hands and did 20 slow press-ups, lingering over each one so that his muscles had no rest. When his arms could stand the pain no longer, he rolled over on his back and, with his hands at his sides, did the straight leg lift until his stomach muscles screamed. He got to his feet, and, after touching his toes 20 times, went over to arm and chest exercises combined with deep breathing until he was dizzy. Oh my god. Panting with the exertion, he went into the big white-tiled bathroom and stood in the glass shower cabinet under very hot and then cold hissing water for 5 minutes. Bond is super bored. At last, after shaving and putting on a sleeveless dark blue Sea Island cotton shirt and navy blue tropical worsted trousers, he slipped his bare feet into black leather sandals and went through the bedroom into the long, big, windowed sitting room with the satisfaction of having sweated his boredom, at any rate, for the time being, out of his body. May, an elderly Scotswoman with iron grey hair and a handsome close face, came in with the tray and put it on the table in the bay window together with the Times, the only paper Bond ever read. Bond wished her good morning and sat down to breakfast. Uh, let's see. I don't think I could do a Scottish accent. um, Good mornings. To Bond, one of May's endearing qualities was that she would call no man sir except Bond had teased her about it years before. English kings and Winston Churchill. As a mark of exceptional regard, she accorded Bond an occasional hint of a s at the end of a word. Mm. So instead of calling him sir, she just makes an S sound to him. Okay. She stood by the table while Bond folded his paper to the center news page. Let's see. Yon man was here again last night about the television. What what man was that? Bond looked along the headlines. Oh, maybe I should give him a deeper voice, huh? What man was that? Bond looked along the headlines. Yon man, that's always coming. 6 times he's been here pestering me since June. After what I said to him the first time about the sinful thing, you'd think he'd give up trying to sell us one. By hire purchase, too, if you please. Persistent chaps, these salesmen. Bond put down his paper and reached for the coffee pot. I gave him a right piece of my mind last night. Disturbing folk at their supper. Asked him if he'd got any papers. Anything to show who he was. I expect that fixed him. Bond filled his large coffee cup to the brim with black coffee. Not a bit of it. Flourished his union card. Said he had every right to earn his living. Electricians' union it was, too. They're the communist one, aren't they? Yes, that's right, said Bond vaguely. His mind sharpened. Was it possible they could be keeping an eye on him? He took a sip of the coffee and put the cup down. Exactly what did this man say, May? He asked, keeping his voice indifferent, but looking up at her. He said he's selling television, sets on commission in his spare time, and are we sure we don't want one? He says we're one of the only folk in the square that haven't got one. Sees there isn't one of those aerial things in the house, I dare say. He's always asking if you're at home so that he can have a word with you about it. Fancy his cheek! I'm surprised he hasn't thought to catch you coming in or going out. He's always asking if I'm expecting you home. Naturally, I don't tell him anything about your movements. Respectable, quiet spoken body, if he wasn't so persistent. Could be, thought Bond. There are many ways of checking up whether the owner's at home or away. A servant's appearance and reactions, a glance through the open door. Um, well, you're wasting your time because he's away, would be the obvious reception if the flat was empty. Should he tell the security section? Bond shrugged his shoulders ir- irritably. What the hell? There was probably nothing in it. Why would they be interested in him? And if there was something in it, security was quite capable of making him change his flat. I expect you frightened him away this time. Bond smiled up at May. I should think you've heard the last of him. Yes, sir, said May doubtfully. At any rate, she had carried out her orders to tell him if she saw anyone hanging about the place. She bustled off with a whisper of the old-fashioned black uniform she persisted in wearing even in the heat of August. Bob went back to his breakfast. Normally, it was little straws in the wind like this that would start a persistent, intuitive ticking in his mind. And on other days, he would not have been happy until he had solved the problem of the man from the Communist Union who kept on coming to the house. Now, from months of idleness and disuse, The sword was rusty in the scabbard, and Bond's mental guard was down. Breakfast was Bond's favorite meal of the day. When he was stationed in London it was always the same. It consisted of very strong coffee from De Bry in New Oxford Street, brewed in an American Chemex, of which he drank 2 large cups, black and without sugar. The single egg in the dark blue egg cup with a gold ring round the top. It was boiled for 3 1/3 minutes. It was a very fresh, speckled brown egg from French Moran's hens, owned by some friend of May in the country. Bond disliked white eggs, and fattish as he was in many small things, it amused him to maintain that there was such a thing as the perfect boiled egg. Then there were two thick slices of whole wheat toast, a large pat of deep yellow Jersey butter, and 3 squat glass jars containing Tiptree Little Scarlet strawberry jam, Cooper's Vintage Oxford marmalade, and Norwegian heather honey from Fortnum's. The coffee pot and the silver on the tray were Queen Anne, and the china was Minton, of the same dark blue and gold and white as the egg cup. That morning Oh, I'm so sorry. I keep yawning. I'm a little sleepy. That morning, while Bond finished his breakfast with honey, he pinpointed the immediate cause of his lethargy and of his low spirits. To begin with, Tiffany Case, his love for so many happy months, had left him, and after final painful weeks during which she had withdrawn to a hotel, had sailed for America at the end of July. He missed her badly, and his mind still sheared away from the thought of her. And it was August, and London was hot and stale. He was due for leave, but he had not the energy or the desire to go off alone, or to try and find some temporary replacement for Tiffany to go with him. So he had stayed on in the half empty headquarters of the Secret Service, grinding away at the old routines, snapping at his secretary, and rasping his colleagues. Wow, Bond is taking this breakup kind of hard. It sounds like he's gonna get a cool Russian rebound girlfriend. Nah, that sucks. Oh, I have just a little bit of tea. Yeah, sorry I keep yawning. I was supposed to start earlier and then all this nonsense happened. Excuse me. Okay, let's see. Right. Even M had finally got impatient with the surely caged tiger on the floor below, and on Monday of this particular week he had sent Bond a sharp note appointing him to a committee of inquiry under Paymaster Captain Troop. The note said that it was time Bond, as a senior officer in the office, I'm sorry, uh, in the service, took a hand in major administrative problems. Anyway, there was no one else available. Headquarters were short-handed, and the 00 section was quiescent. Bond would pray report that afternoon at 2:30 to room 412. It was Troop, reflected Bond, as he lit his first cigarette of the day, who was the most nagging and immediate cause of his discomfort. In every large business there is one man who is the office tyrant and bugbear, and who is cordially disliked by all the staff. This individual performs an unconsciously important role by acting as a kind of lightning conductor for the usual, yeah, of, jeez, I cannot read now. A lightning conductor for the usual office hates and fears. In fact, he reduces their disruptive influence by providing them with a common target. The man is usually the general manager or the head of admin. He is that indispensable man who is a watchdog over the small things: petty cash, heat and light, towels and soap in the lavatories, stationery supplies, the canteen, the holiday rota, the punctuality of the staff. He is the one man who has real impact on the office comforts and amenities, and whose authority extends into the private and personal habits of the men and women of the organization. To want such a job and to have the necessary qualifications for it, the man must have exactly those qualities which irritate and abrade. He must be parsimonious, ob- observant, prying, and meticulous, and he must be a strong disciplinarian and indifferent to opinion. He must be a little dictator. In all well-run businesses there is such a man, in the head of admin, whose job it is, in his own words, to keep the peace, or keep the place shipshape and Bristol fashion. It was inevitable that Captain Troop's duties would bring him into conflict with most of the organization, but it was particularly unfortunate that M could think of no one but Troop to spare as chairman for this particular committee. For this was yet one more of those committees of inquiry dealing with the delicate intricacies of the Burgess and McLean case, and with the lessons that could be learned from it. M had dreamed it up 5 years after he had closed his own particular file on that case, purely as a sop to the Privy Council inquiry into the security services which the Prime Minister had ordered in 1955. At once, Bond had got into a hopeless wrangle with Troop over the employment of intellectuals in the Secret Service. Perversely, and knowing it would annoy, Bond had put forward the proposition that if M15 and the Secret Service were to concern themselves seriously with the Atom Age intellectual spy, they must employ a certain number of intellectuals to counter them. Retired officers of the Indian Army, Bond had pronounced, can't possibly understand the thought. Oh, sorry. Bond is talking right now. Retired officers of the Indian Army, Bond had pronounced, can't possibly understand the thought process of a Burgess or a McLean, as they won't even know such people exist, let alone be in a position to frequent their cliques and get to know their friends and their secrets. Once Burgess and McLean went to Russia, the only way to make contact with them again, and perhaps when they got tired of Russia, turned them into double agents against the Russians, would have been to send their closest friends to Moscow and Prague and Budapest, with orders to wait until one of these chaps crept out of the masonry and made contact, and one of them, probably Burgess, would have been driven to make contact by his loneliness and by his ache to tell his story to someone. But they certainly wouldn't take the risk of revealing themselves to some men with a trench coat and a cavalier moustache and a beta minus mind. "Oh, really?" Troop said with icy calm. "So you suggest we should staff the organization with long-haired perverts. That's quite an original notion. I thought we were all agreed that homosexuals were about the worst security risk there is. I can't see the Americans handing over many atom secrets to a lot of pansies soaked in scent. Oh my god. Oh my god, what did I just read? Oh my god, this next part. All intellectuals aren't homosexual, and many of them are bald. I'm just saying that. And so, the argument had gone on intermittently through the hearings of the past 3 days, and the other committee members had ranged themselves more or less with Troop. Now, today, they had to draw up their recommendations, and Bond was wondering whether if the unpopular step of entering a minority report. How seriously did he feel about the whole question? Bond wondered at 9 o'clock. He walked out of his flat and down the steps to his car. Was he just being petty and obstinate? Had he constituted himself into a one-man opposition only to give his teeth something to bite into? Was he so bored that he could find nothing better to do than make a nuisance of himself inside his own organization? Bond, and behind it all, there was a nagging disquiet he couldn't put his finger on. My god, why can't I turn the page? As he pressed the self-starter and the twin exhausts of the Bentley woke to their fluttering growl, a curious bastard quotation slipped from nowhere into Bond's mind. Those whom the gods wish to destroy, they first make bored. Jeez. So he feels like he's gonna be destroyed. Well, let's see. What time is it? Oh, it's 11:14. Man, I'm sorry, everyone, that I started so late. Like, telling you. I deleted the videos and, like, the recordings, but, yeah, I was reading for 30 minutes and there was no audio. There was absolutely no audio. But, I'm thinking either I will stream another reading stream to get us all caught up because we're kind of behind, or we can just wait until next Sunday to read again. We'll figure it out. I'll put it in the Discord, or you guys can like just let me know, send me a message or something. But I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna get off because it's pretty late for me, and I hope to see you all on the next one. I'll be back Tuesday. So give me a follow if you like, so you can get those notifications. I'll see you guys later. Bye. Good night.